Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this review, we are looking at the Storm Collectibles Mortal Kombat NIGHTWOLF. One of, based on the pre-release images, the solicitation images, I thought it was going to be one of the best looking figures in the Mortal Kombat line. And now that I have it in hand, I think that might be true, not counting like the standouts like Goro or Shao Kahn where they're like huge and have all this crazy stuff going on. For just a regular release, this guy kind of has a lot going on, and most of it is done really well. I think he's awesome. I don't know how a lot of you guys are feeling about it. I'm going to talk about some things that actually throw it off, that keep it from looking awesome, even though it still is kind of. It's a weird, confusing thing. We're going to talk about that, but it's a pretty good release. So let's go ahead and get it off the stand and take a closer look. Alrighty, before we look at the figure, let's take a quick look at the package. Standard Storm Fare, nice front window with the top there. Looks good. Figure right here, that's fine. Pose looks pretty good. Posing options back here. Two things to note back here. They don't show one of the alternate heads, so we actually got an extra one. And then they also called him Nightworld instead of Nightwolf. Just noticed that, figured I'd mention it because why not? Alright, so fine packaging. Storm has one of the better packagings, if you ask me. Okay, let's get this out of the way so there's no shadow, and let's talk about the figure. This guy stands roughly, let's call it, I got an accent there for a second. Let's call it 20 centimeters. That's going to be just about 7 7/8, something like that. Here he is up against Darwin, definitely out of scale, because there's a different scale. Started off as supposedly being 1/12 scale, but certainly is not at this point. Okay, question of the day. How do you feel about the little cutouts in his pants? I have always hated them a lot. Don't like them at all. And then I'll just mention it since we can go right into the aesthetics. This one's painted okay down here, but they didn't paint it on the knee, so that doesn't look great. And then on this side, it's not painted well at the bottom and not at the knee, so that looks pretty bad. Tiny thing, but it stood out to me. Alright, so first thing I want to mention is the reason I have an alternate head on him is because mine, I'm hoping it's just mine and not everybody's, the base head, the plain head, it's slightly defective in that the socket is not seated properly in the head, so it gives him a really, really long neck. And Storm makes their figures pretty chunky, so a long neck kind of ruins that. So what I'm going to have to do is try to pop out that socket in there and then reseat it, or I might just drill through it. I'll probably just drill through it and make it seat a little bit lower, but we're going to leave that one on there for now. Alright, so as far as paint goes, he does have some shading. I can't speak anymore. Some shading throughout the arms, mostly up in the shoulders and biceps. Nothing going on in the chest. It looks a little flat as a result. I mean, not sculpt-wise, but finish-wise. Actually, not finish-wise either. Doesn't have any color depth to it. The sculpt is great. I love the musculature. It's very nice. Reminds me a lot of Arnold, actually. I don't know if he's supposed to be that thick, but it's overall pretty good looking. It's just a lack of shading throughout that kind of throws it off. There's none in the blue, so that looks very unfinished. The black is there, but obviously there's no shading there. It does look a little bit flat. I don't think it's going to be a huge problem, because it's still a pretty good looking figure. There's a lot of shading on the boots, which I just wish was carried throughout. The silver is painted nicely. And then I think the face paint is some of the best we've seen. The little black lines around the red, and then the eyes and the mouth and everything. Lips could be a little better, I think, too. They're a little purple. But the, that red, that looks awesome. And then they painted the feathers and stuff. It's pretty good overall. I think it needs to be brought to life more than most Storm figures. A lot of them don't have a ton of shading, but this one I think needed it specifically in the torso. And then maybe a little bit on the pants. It's just missing something. Paint job back here is nice and clean. And then what is here in his ugly pant cutouts is clean too. It's not bad, just I think could be better. And then for the sculpt, I think there's not much they could have done with this, but there are two things going on that make him look like he's not that shapely for a muscled guy, and he's very musculature, oh my goodness. He's very muscled. One is the straps here are actually built into the sculpt, and it throws off the sculpt of the bicep a lot. And it takes away the profile. Instead of having a kind of a dip between the bicep and the shoulder, it's just flat. So that makes the arms look noodly, even though they're very musculature. And then the vest is hiding his narrow waist and broad chest. He's actually very musculature. Oh my gosh! Okay, I'm not sleeping, and I think I've had a stroke at this point. He's very well sculpted, but the clothing items kind of hide it and make him look a little frumpy, almost like it reminds me of the that one Marvel Legends build that they use that sucks really bad. It was used for Whirlwind a little bit and Reaper and a couple other ones, but it doesn't have the problems really. He does have the good muscles and he does have the good sculpt. It's just kind of hidden by the clothing items. So be aware of that. I think once you pose him, it's going to look just fine. But proportion-wise, it's pretty solid. The head looks tiny and tall here because it's sitting too high right now, but normally it looks okay with the other heads. So aesthetically, I'm going to go 7.5 out of 10. It, in some ways, is one of their best releases, but in other ways, it's not as good as we've seen some of them be. So it's kind of unfortunate, but there are things about it that are really nice. But other things hold it back. Okay, on to the accessories. This is one of the best assortments we've seen from Storm. We have 4 total heads. You can see a few different open mouths and then one where he's yelling. Very, very nicely done. Very good. For hands, we have the 2 fist hands that come out in the package, then a whole bunch of other ones. That's cool. We get 2 different versions of his... is it a tomahawk when it has that long of a handle, or is it just an axe? Not sure. Either way, you get the green one and the silver one. Then you get his green... bow and arrow. That's awesome. I love the clear to green shading on the bow. And then you get the lightning effect that snaps onto the axe, whatever kind of axe that is. Really nice spread of accessories. I like them a whole bunch. Very, very pleased with that. So 9.5 out of 10 for accessories. Very, very good. Now, as far as articulation goes, it's going to be your standard Storm fare. However, there is one major problem. We're going to see how major it is as we go. So the head, other than being too high, it still moves around nicely. The neck is sculpted in such a way. Let's use one of the other heads so that it doesn't look quite as goofy. I still think it's a little bit long for Storm, especially since most of their figures have really short necks. There we go. That's a little bit better looking. But yeah, it does allow him to lean the way they intended that neck joint to work, which doesn't always work, and his does, so I like that. Then the head rotates like that, but on top of that top ball peg, they don't actually get a lot of range out of this because it's a cylinder that it pegs into rather than a ball socket. So you don't get much range out of the top. For the shoulders, it's how they normally do them. So you get a ball peg in there that this cap is hiding. But it's very, very tight on mine. It does go forward and back, so that's okay. Going up and down, I'm not getting much. We'll come back to that. Shoulder goes out to the side that far without using the ball peg. With the ball peg, I can't get it to go much more, but it does go up, so that's okay. But here's the thing that is the biggest problem I'm running into. Oh man. That does not sound good, and it seems like it's going to get worse. I don't think it's going to break until it actually binds, but that sort of joint right there, that's what that is it's shredding. There's little tiny, probably microscopic, maybe macroscopic, pieces of plastic being sheared off of the socket or the ball, and it's binding up inside between the 2 pieces. Oh my goodness. And so as that keeps happening, it gets tighter and tighter and tighter. Or what can happen is it gets looser and looser, but usually it's tighter and tighter. So you might want to throw a little bit of silicone oil in there. This side's even tighter. Oh my goodness. If you can even get to it without breaking it, good luck. But that definitely needs to be lubricated. That's a bummer. Bicep swivel is fine. You have to use a little bit of force, but it works, so that's okay. Double jointed elbow, let's see what kind of range we get. I do wish Storm would give us a little bit more range out of the elbows. They can do it without making it ugly. They already don't have the best looking joints, which I don't care about personally, but if you're gonna have that anyway, give us better range. These guys are separate pieces down here, so the wrists have pretty good range on their ball hinges, that's fine. This is a nice loose piece. Does it come off completely? Yeah, it seems like it does. So if you wanted to make him shirtless, you could. I don't know if that ever happens in the games. But if you're just a perv, then you can do that. Okay, so let's see what kind of range we get out of this abdomen. The lower one gives you all kinds of range, so that's good. The upper one should be fine. He leans back pretty well. That's nice. And he leans forward pretty well also. Yeah, this is one of their better bodies. It has really nice musculature. Some of them are a little tubular and blocky. This guy has a lot of peckage, which is good. The lats, the serratus muscles in this area shaped well. I like it. It's a good build. They did a good job with it. The abs look nice. Works well. You get your rotation out of that. Let's see how the legs work. I think they're going to work pretty well, given that they actually cut out enough plastic here. We don't have a giant diaper like the McFarlane figures. So let's see. Yeah, he can kick just about to horizontal, so that is fine. Going back, the cakes move enough, so that's okay. We don't rate cakes unless it's a McFarlane review, though, guys. Don't get too excited. Going out to the side. Basically full-on splits, that's fine. Shao Kahn had really loose hips. His are fine going out to the side. Could be tighter forward and back, but it's not bad. Thigh swivel works pretty well. Actually better than I thought it would. Double jointed knees. Not bad. We've seen better, but we've seen a lot worse. So I'll take it. That is fine. And then for the ankles, let's see what they did here. We always get decent range going back. That's fine. Going forward, though, is usually pretty limited. It still is. It's not terrible, but it's more limited than it needs to be, so that's a bummer. Ankle rocker is pretty steep. That's not great. Toe hinge is not the worst we've seen, but certainly not the best. You don't need that. This gap right here is so unnecessary. I don't know why these companies do it. Don't do that. It's ugly, 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 and it doesn't work as well as it could. Not because of that, just in general. So could be better in terms of articulation. Most of it works pretty well. I'll give it a 7 for articulation for Storm. The tight joint, if it gets lubed, should be fine. But otherwise, he's fine. His articulation doesn't stand out in either direction for me. I still think his head's too high. I'm going to drill out all the heads, probably. Make him sit a little bit lower. You can't be that bulky and have your head sit that high. It looks weird. But ultimately, it is a good release. I like it a whole bunch. I want Storm to do T-Hawk. T-Hawk from Street Fighter is a very cool character because he's humongous. I've always wanted Storm to do one of him, but seeing this makes me think of this guy's like a less good version of T-Hawk, if you ask me. Character design wise, I want T-Hawk. They're very similar, like ridiculously similar. But I'm a Street Fighter guy, so I want that. Plus T-Hawk's like twice as big, so that would be cool too. Oh, anyway, final verdict for this guy, for Storm, not counting the accessories, 7 out of 10. It's not the best release. There's some awesome things about it, but there's some other things that hold it back. But the accessories, I'm going to give it a bonus bump to 8 out of 10. The accessories are really darn good. So yeah, 8 out of 10 for this guy. Really strong release with some relatively strong flaws to be aware of. So there it is, guys. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please do give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. And if you haven't subscribed, you should. I have new videos every day but Wednesday and thousands already on the channel. So make sure you come back for all of that. And in the meantime, keep collecting.